Are you excited?
I'm really excited.
Okay, perfect. So welcome, Alex. Not Alex. Oh my God, I already fucked it up. I'm like looking, I'm like, why do you have five names? Matt. Wow. I literally, guys, 2 minutes ago, I was like, how do I say Mathieu? Do I say Mathieu-Alexandre? What do I call you? This guy has like 10 names. Anyways, Mathieu-Alexandre Poupart, we're going with Matt for the podcast. How's it going?
It's going really well. I'm
Awesome.
super excited to do this.
Yeah, I know that we connected through Lauren Brown, who's a real estate agent. So you've worked in collaboration with her as a mortgage broker. So it's going to be interesting to hear your perspective on what it is that you do, but also how you've built your brand, because I know you do things a little differently than a traditional mortgage broker. So I want to jump right into what inspired you to be a mortgage broker and how did you go about establishing your brand in the industry?
Yeah, I mean, my background is in business. I ran a company that was or had nothing to do with finance or real estate for almost 9 years.
Oh, wow.
And I wasn't learning as much as I would have wanted to in the last few years. In a sense, it was getting a little boring, but I was investing in real estate. So I'd done a couple flips.
Okay.
I still now buy properties, renovate them and rent them out and try to keep going.
What was the
And
company, by the way?
we designed fireplaces in Montreal,
Okay.
manufactured them in China, imported them, and distributed them all over North America as a wholesaler.
Interesting. And so you just decided to like run away from that? Was there a reason you ended that company or is it still something you're doing?
So we ended up selling it. It was a family business, and I
Oh,
was a
sweet.
partner in it. And but I was running it, and then at the end, I told my dad, who was my partner, I was like, look, we either try to find someone else to run it, or we could try to sell it. But we happened to find a buyer pretty quickly, and we were really lucky, and ended up
That's
selling
cool.
it.
How do you do that? How do you even go about finding a buyer?
I think most times people will use brokers, but we just kind of spoke about it and happened to find a buyer without a broker. Yeah. It
Wow,
was like they fell out
interesting.
of the sky.
Okay,
Honestly, the
cool.
timing was perfect, and I hit kind of submit on my application to do my license to become a mortgage broker like the day we had a deal kind of set up, and I stayed
So
on with
you
them.
already had an idea. Yeah, you
Yeah,
already
and
had the idea that you wanted to switch.
yeah, exactly. And then it was either, my dad had started another company and he really wanted me to go work with him, so I spent a month at that company kind of scoping out to see if I wanted to join, and in the end I decided to do my own thing and become a mortgage broker.
Oh, interesting. So what skill set did you bring from working on that company into being a mortgage broker?
So
And also why mortgage brokers? Why mortgage brokerage?
yeah. So I mean, as you know, like as an entrepreneur, whatever business you end up starting, really you end up being in sales, right? Whatever your company
Yes.
is, you need to drive sales. So when
Hmm.
I started in the fireplace company, it was a lot of customer service at first, but eventually I was really in sales and I was running the company, but really I had to maintain our sales. And
Hmm.
when I bought the first couple of properties that we flipped, we got mortgages, but I had no idea why we got the mortgage products we got. And sure, they got approved, but they weren't necessarily the products that best suited our needs, especially for a flip or if you were going to refinance. Like there's particularities you want to be aware of. And I wasn't kind of educated on why I chose or why we chose those certain products with the mortgage specialist or the mortgage broker that we worked with at the time. So then in choosing, what I wanted to do in real estate, it was either
Hmm.
become a real estate broker or a mortgage broker. And I thought about my experience, and my experience with the real estate brokers were great. I know that there's a lot more real estate brokers than there are mortgage brokers in Quebec. So I really wanted to kind of come out of the gate running. And I thought I could do a better job of that as a mortgage broker just because there's less competition. I thought I could differentiate myself a little more as a mortgage broker. And, uh, and my kind of angle when I started, and it's still this, it's to educate. So to really make sure that every client I help knows why they're choosing either a 2-year fixed or a 5-year fixed rate product versus variable or vice versa. And, they're not kind of left in the dark about why they chose a certain product. So it's really about educating. That's what I wanted to do because I
Yeah.
felt like that's what I lacked when I bought the first few properties. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's interesting you mentioned this whole concept of like any business that you run, it's like a sales operation. And I feel like interestingly enough, so it's almost 6 years that I've been running Nomad Creative and it really started organically because I had moved from becoming a freelancer to eventually creating an agency, transferred my freelance clients into agency clients, eventually built a team. It all happened super organically, word of mouth. And oddly, I had zero like sales to do. And now I'm at a point where I want to scale my company. And I recognize that like I can't just sit back and depend on referrals all day. As much as those are amazing, it's like if you do want to take your business to the next level and scale, sales is where it's at. And so it's like almost 6 years into the business is where I'm realizing like shit, like I need to learn how to sell. Like I need to learn how to like find clients and not just sit back and wait for them. So it's like I was always able to sell in the sense that like when someone comes to me and we have a conversation on like the services that they need, I can sell my services right in that conversation. But it's also a matter of like acquiring those clients, and that's what needs to happen before you can even make that sale. So I definitely hear you in that sense, and I'm sure like any entrepreneur, you know, that's one of the hardest things to do, is to really find your clients. And there's a million different things that you can do, but what would you say is like the one thing that helped you get your clients most?
I mean, so you know, when you do a good job, you don't necessarily have to sell. So that's, it sounds like that's what happened with you, right? Like you were just offering your products and
Right.
people liked what you were offering. And then, so they wanted to use all of your services, right? But then if you want to kind of scale that,
Mm-hmm.
you need to kind of figure out what's working and how do you kind of spread the word and make it that more people will kind of come to you and gravitate towards you. So for me, you know, at the beginning, it was always about education, but how do I let people know that I'm going to kind of do that, right? So I do that with social
Right.
media mainly. But at the
Mm-hmm.
same time, when let's say you wanted to buy a house, most people will go to a real estate broker before going to a mortgage broker because they just think, okay, I want to buy a house. A real estate broker is going to be able to help me. And then the first thing a real estate broker says to a client is, great, are you pre approved for a mortgage? No. Okay, so go see the mortgage broker I work with most. So for me, it was like, okay, so I want to show real estate brokers that I will do a good job in educating their clients and offering them the best possible service. So I did that with social media to then kind of, when you know, when I speak to the real estate broker, they'll already have seen me on social media. So it won't be a cold call
Mm-hmm.
when I reach
Mm-hmm.
out to a real estate broker or a financial planner who might be referring clients to a mortgage broker. They're going to be like, okay, I'll call, let's say, you know, I call a real estate broker and I'll say, hey, my name's Matt. And they'll say, oh yeah, I've seen you on social media. You know, I like what you do. And it's just a lot easier to kind of spread the word that way rather than coming in super cold and be like, hey, my name's Matt. I'm a mortgage broker. And they have no
Right.
idea who I am because they get that call all the time.
Yeah. So your strategy is more so to connect with the real estate agents because that's typically where home buyers are inclined to go. But little do they know is that they're probably better off coming to someone like you. It's just that there's no knowledge in people who are looking to buy homes to come to a mortgage broker. Is that
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, exactly. And it's not only, let's say, real estate brokers, but oftentimes people will reach out to their financial planners or financial advisors on, you know, like we're thinking about buying real estate, whether it's an investment or as an owner occupied property. Do you
Hmm.
have anyone you could recommend? So it's just about kind of going to the initial kind of point of contact so that
Right.
they think of you. And obviously, the goal for me is always to try and create like a raving fan out of anyone who's sent to me, right? So I really want the financial planner, the real estate broker who sent me the client to get a call back from the client thanking the real estate broker for having sent them to me. Like that's the ultimate
Right.
goal. It's not going to
Awesome.
happen 100% of the time,
Yeah.
but if we can have it most of the time, then I think it's good.
Often enough. So you mentioned your focus on education and having that stress-free process. Why is that important for you to provide for your clients?
So when you're buying a house, I think it's like one of the top three most important moments in most people's lives, right? There's like
Hmm.
getting married, buying a house, and having kids. And
Fair.
especially the
Starting a
first,
business.
yeah, starting a business too, for sure. But especially like the first property you ever buy, like it's so stressful. You can have clients with like great income, great credit scores. For me, it's like a no-brainer file. They're going to get approved. Like it's not even a question, but they're still worried when they're waiting for their final approval from the bank or the lender because
Hmm.
it's the first time they're going through the process. They're spending hundreds of thousands or it's
A
even
lot of
millions, yeah,
unknowns.
millions of
Yeah.
dollars sometimes. So
Yeah.
it's really stressful. So if I can really educate them on what the process will look like ahead of time so that they know exactly what to expect and I let them know what the underwriter on the bank side is kind of thinking and how they're going to go through the process, I could give them the confidence so that they know that A, they're going to get approved. We've done all their due diligence. And B, they know that it's going to take, you know, 4 or 5 days before you get a final approval. But
Hmm.
more importantly, it's about making sure that they're confident in the mortgage product that they chose.
Yeah.
Because if
It's
if 2 years down the line you find out that when you want to sell, you're caught with a massive penalty because you're selling and breaking the mortgage because you chose a product with a slightly lower rate. If they weren't aware that like because of the lower rate they're choosing, they might end up with a big penalty, then it's not ideal.
Hmm. I love that you're leaning into that like education aspect because I'm almost even connecting this to like personal milestones in my life and other people's lives. And it's like where people feel the most stressed and out of control, it's because they don't know, right? They don't have the knowledge. And it's like, as silly of an example as this is, I'm thinking like when I got my dog a few years ago, it was like the first time we were going to have a puppy, first time I was going to have a big dog. And people I'm sure who have like kids feel the same way, right? And like women who are pregnant, whatever, and they have no idea what to experience because it's like the first time that they're doing it. And so by reading, educating yourself, having that knowledge, it really kind of brings this like sense of ease to the whole process. So I can really see even from like personal examples in my life how that would be supportive in someone who is buying a home. Because when my husband and I bought our house, like we were kind of in the dark. Like as much as my dad was a real estate agent, he had only so much to share because he was in the Quebec market. We were buying in Ontario. So there are some like discrepancies there.
For sure.
But like little things that I would have never known about until now, like now that I've done it, I'm like, okay, next time let's do this differently. And had I spoken to someone like you, maybe I would have had a different experience. So I love that you're doing that with your clients.
Yeah, I think like the ultimate
What
goal.
would you say, like in terms of strategies for growth, what have you found? Oh,
I
are
was
we
just
lagging?
I don't know, maybe. I was gonna say
Sorry, go ahead.
the ultimate goal really is like managing expectations, but not only for the clients on my end, but also for the selling broker and the sellers, the people selling the house, so that everyone's aware of when they can expect what kind of milestones to hit during the transaction process. And in Quebec, for some reason, we always only have like 10 or 14 days to get a final approval for a mortgage application. It's not like that in the rest of Canada. It's
Oh,
not
really?
like that
Okay.
in Ontario.
Mm.
In Ontario, you just need a commitment letter from a bank, which is the bank saying, we'll commit to this mortgage as long as these conditions are satisfied. But in Quebec, those conditions have to be satisfied within the 10 or 14 days. So there's just like so much more
Oh,
pressure on the buyers and on the sellers. And
yeah.
so if expectations are not managed properly, I think people stress a lot, and it could be for no reason.
Yeah, definitely. Even just to have someone like holding your hand along the way for sure. I feel like I had like a million and one questions and even at that, like there were so many questions I just didn't even know to ask, you know?
Yeah, for sure. It's
For
stressful,
sure.
especially the first time. But once you've done it once, usually the second time is a lot more smooth and everyone's a lot more calm about it. But it's good to have a good team, a good real estate broker, a good mortgage broker.
Yeah, definitely. So, kind of jumping back to your business, how you've grown it. So, it sounds like you're relying on a really solid strategy, connecting with other real estate agents in order to make those relationships, have them refer clients to you. Do you do any outreach specifically to other people who might be buying homes? If so, where do you find them? Or is your strategy really focused on just connecting with other agents?
So I think inherently, when you're a mortgage broker, your business tends to snowball. So the more transactions you do in a year, the better job you do. Every client is going to end up, or not, yeah, hopefully every client is going to end up referring you to their friends or family when they hear about them looking to either buy or to refinance, or maybe they have a mortgage renewal coming up. So ideally, if you do a really good job with them, they're going to be happy to refer you to a friend or family. So
Mm-hmm.
I think that happens inherently. But if you want to grow your business quickly or faster, then that's why I put a lot of emphasis on building really solid kind of partnerships with these referral sources that can be real estate brokers or financial planners or even notaries. I think that's really important. So for me, it's a way of growing my business quicker, but also I think it's really helpful for clients when they have a real estate broker and a mortgage broker who are partners and who have worked together before, because we work in sync. We
Yeah.
stay in touch a lot more than if it was a real estate broker that I didn't know. So I think it's a lot better for the client when they have a team who is used to working together.
Mm-hmm. It's a lot about building relationships, I think, in every industry, really. And, entrepreneurship can be very lonely and it could be hard to connect with different people. But social media is definitely like an avenue, I think, that you've at least been able to leverage for your business growth. So tell me, like, what's changed since you started this company of yours? How long has it been? And what do you feel like is the biggest thing that's changed since you started it to now?
So I started almost 5 years ago. It'll be 5 years, January 1st.
Hmm.
And it's going really, really quick. I can't believe it's already been 5 years, but
Yeah.
we're so every business is obviously very dependent on the economy and the market and how that shifts, but I haven't had one year that's been the same year over year. Like normally in a year, there's kind of, transactions will happen in waves. So in the spring, we do a lot of mortgage pre-approvals. People get a lot of accepted offers. The majority of our transactions tend to close in June or July, especially in Quebec because everyone moves July 1st. But there hasn't been one year because I started pretty much 2020. So it was a COVID year. There was like that housing
Mm,
friendly frenzy. Everyone wanted to buy. And that went on for 2.5, 3 years. And then the last 2 years, with the rates kind of starting to skyrocket, the market slowed down a lot. But as soon as the rates stopped increasing, people started buying again. So it's just been kind of, honestly, kind of chaotic, especially the COVID
yeah.
years. It's been kind of really messy. So um, I think the market's been very different every year, but also policies change. So,
Hmm.
there's financial regulators that kind of impose rules and regulations on the banks, and those rules tend to change almost every year. So we're always kind of adapting to the rules imposed by the governments or the regulators, and it's important for us to kind of keep up and to make sure that we're able to master the changes and translate that to educating our clients. But it's tricky, honestly. Like I didn't realize the rules changed so often before becoming a mortgage broker.
Yeah, a lot of like learning as you go, I guess, right? And I think it's like that in any business and every industry, like it's literally such a roller coaster, so many ups and downs, but it's a matter of like what happens in those downs, how can we learn, how can we get better? Like at the end of the day, they're there for us, and it's a lesson that like something that I preach but also need to like apply myself because sometimes it gets so overwhelming when you're like in these dips, but it's like okay, like you're always having to learn and pivot and make sure that you're up to date with the information, whatever industry that you're in, whatever is happening in the economy. So like understanding that the economy has obviously had a really big impact on your business from like a brand perspective and from like the business itself. What do you feel like has changed in that regard? Because like obviously it must be a reflection of the economy. I know you said it kind of goes like up and down, but have you felt maybe like a different level of ease as you've kind of gone through the years and how you deal with things as they come, maybe?
Yeah, I mean, I think with experience, you just become more and more confident in your knowledge, and that definitely
Hmm.
translates in even the videos I put out, right? Like in my first year, if you go back like 4 or 5 years, I made a lot of videos for my, let's say, Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn, and I wasn't necessarily the same confident mortgage broker or expert that I am now. I've really, really kind of mastered the underwriting aspect of it, and I can answer almost any question with regards to mortgages. Um, so I think that's definitely changed, but also people's questions change every year also because when I started it was okay,
Right.
rates are at like 2%. How can we get in on this? What's the best product then was completely different than what the best product is now. I don't know, it changes quickly. Like even year to year, the Bank of Canada tends to say things that impact how people think, and it's continuously changing. So it's just a lot of adapting and being able to kind of roll with the punches and adapt to what
Hmm.
the market's doing. So it's I don't know. It's
How do you deal with that? Like, I feel like that must be so frustrating to have to deal with, like mentally and also from like a technical aspect. Like, how do you deal with it?
I think it's more about staying in the loop. Like so for sure, if I wasn't in the know about the changes that were happening, or if I only found out 2 weeks later that you know a regulator changed a certain law or that the Bank of Canada decided to pause, that would be really tough. But if
Right.
I know when the announcements are coming out and I stay on top of them, then it's a lot easier to understand what their thinking was, and also trying to understand why regulators or the Bank of Canada are implementing certain changes. really helps too. So there are mortgage brokers or mortgage specialists or people in the industry who don't necessarily follow all the changes and the reasons
Oh.
behind all those changes. And for them, I think it'd be a little trickier. But if you like, I'm really interested in why certain things are happening, and that helps, because if I was just reacting to the changes as opposed to kind of trying to anticipate them, then that'd be a different story. So
Hmm.
it's really, just following the economy, following the Bank of Canada, following all the banks too, and all the data they're putting out. That helps a lot.
Yeah, it's almost like you're doing for yourself what you do for your clients too, right? Making sure that you're staying on top of things, that you're staying educated in order to be prepared and not be so blindsided as things come. So I love that. I think that that's such an important lesson. It's just like being on top of your shit. Like if I even relate it back to Nomad Creative, like think about the marketing business, the social media business, branding, this, that, like how brands are approached and how to approach brands in the market. Like so much changes. And I've been doing this for like since 2011 is really when I started my career in this industry. Um, so that's a long freaking time, and things have obviously changed. Like even just like the platforms that are available. It's like for the first time in my life, and listen, I'm just 30. Like I'm not even that old, but I'm feeling my age in a weird way because there's so much that I feel like I can't alone keep up with. Like thank God for my team and like for people in different generations who are very much like in touch with what's going on in the social media marketing world, because it does become overwhelming and there's only so much like you can absorb in like conjunction with actually like running a business. It's not like if I was just sitting there and my only job was to read, consume, and understand the changes that were happening, but like even with AI and how like that's really creating such a shift in our industry too, which I'm sure is something you could even leverage in what you're doing. Like it's everywhere. So being on top of that too, and learning like what to watch out for, what we can embrace, what we can leverage, because if we're not paying attention to those things, we're going to fall behind, right?
It's wild. Like I have two younger brothers, and they don't have Instagram. They don't
They
communicate via
don't.
text. No, not a no. They message their friends via like Snapchat, and I think they have TikTok still, but I feel like TikTok for them is kind of like almost passe now.
How
So
old are
it's
they?
one's 18 or 19, and the other's 16.
It's passe for them.
I think so. It's
That's
crazy.
insane.
Yeah, so it's kind of, I look to them to kind of get a feel for where I should kind of put some efforts for
Right.
their generation who's going to start buying, real estate in the next 10 years or so,
Yeah, hopefully, for God's
hopefully.
sakes. It's so hard for like my brother is 28. Um and he like I mean, I just got it. I think I just got into the market at a good time when I bought my house. It was, we signed the papers at the end of 2019. So, like,
Okay.
before shit went crazy, we moved in like summer 2020 because we were building our house. But, like, the price that we got for our house, the mortgage rate that we got, like, what a joke. Even a year later, like, prices increased over like $100,000 in our neighborhood. And now we can probably sell our house for almost double, which is
Yeah.
insane. Like, I don't think our house is worth that much. Like if I think about what you think like $1 million home is supposed to look like, it's just wild to me. But anyways, that's a whole other conversation.
Yeah. But I did see, like, I saw it was a little article about like how, 20 years ago when I was a kid, like to me, $1 million house was like a mansion. But now, you're not going to get close to a mansion for a
Yeah,
million
now it's
bucks.
like
And
1,500 square feet
yeah, exactly. It's wild.
with like a
It's so
tiny backyard.
wild.
It
Yeah.
makes no sense.
And we don't need to get into it, but I don't
No.
know that it's going to get any, I don't know that it's going to get any better in the next 5 or 10 years.
Yeah, 5 or 10. Oh shit, I hope it's more like five. Because my whole concern is like what happens when we want to leave this place. Like now we're thinking this is probably going to be an investment property when we want to go to our next house, whatever. But like strategically, it would be dumb for us to sell this house and then buy another house. It's not like you're getting like bang for your buck, right? Like you're taking money from one house and putting it into another that's like completely inflated in price. So that's where like the challenge lies. Hopefully we can kind of keep this one and then eventually make money off of it down the line, but it's also a matter of like having the capital to invest in a second house. So anyways, we'll cross that bridge when we get there. I'm just I'm just sharing my feelings with you right now.
The feelings that pretty much every Canadian has, though.
Probably,
Yeah.
yeah, probably. We should definitely have a separate conversation on that. But back to you. I want to hear a little bit more about like some of your biggest setbacks. So we spoke about the ups and downs. Like it's obviously been a struggle with the economy recently, but in your business specifically, what do you feel has been the biggest setback that you've had trouble coming back from?
Um, it's there's no real specific, but it is having to deal with the interest rates right now because it's
Right.
we haven't seen increases in interest rates like this that quickly pretty much ever before. We have seen interest rates go up very high in Canada,
Mm-hmm.
in the 80s, but we haven't seen them increase this quickly. So I think it's really reacting and being able to help clients understand what is going on and what the best mortgage product is what product they should be choosing right now based on this crazy economic situation.
Yeah.
So it's really trying to learn on my end about what's going on in the economy. I want to say when we can expect rates to come down, but no one knows, and
You
there's
can
no
never predict that.
you
Yeah.
can never predict it, and you can't promise it to clients. So it's just really important now more than ever to explain to clients what the advantages and disadvantages are of pretty much every available product
Mm-hmm.
so that they can make the best informed decision on what product they should be choosing for the next 2 or 3 or 4 years where rates are really high. So it's really adapting to this new situation that a lot of people, even mortgage brokers who've been in the industry for like 20 years, haven't seen a situation like this before.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really not getting ahead of yourself, not trying to kind of push clients to go with the product that might pay you the most. It's really making sure that they are aware of the advantages, but also the disadvantages of every single product, and then trying to help them make the best choice for their particular situation. And it's not that it's necessarily hard, but every client has different objectives and different
Right.
goals when they're buying a property. So it's really trying to understand what their goal is for their specific situation and then helping them, have all the information they need to choose the right product because it's not the same for every single client.
Yeah, I was gonna ask, and then I was like, maybe I shouldn't ask because, like, what's like your recommendation? But like you said, it's different for everyone based on how long they want to live there, right? Like how what their other
Yeah.
assets look like and what their primary goal of the property is. I would assume that's
Yeah.
my guess.
Yeah, for sure. So it's really, I try to ask them as many questions as possible. And I meet every single client I can on Zoom to really have that conversation to be like, okay, well, where do you see yourselves in the next 5 years? Are
Yeah.
you hoping to buy more properties? If so, let's build a scenario where in 2 or 3 years you're qualifying for another house so that we take it into consideration. And that way they really understand why they're taking a certain product and they understand the risks of going with a certain product versus another one. And that way
Hmm.
they're at least comfortable, even though, for a lot of people, it is a scary time to be buying real estate because rates are high and prices are high. So it's as long as they're okay and content with the choices they're making, I think that they'll be happy.
Have you noticed things slow down in the last like year because of that?
Yeah. So mortgage originations are down like 30% this year overall,
Hmm.
which is huge. There's 30% less new mortgages this year than there were last year. So that's a massive, massive cut.
But wasn't
Um,
there also like a big rise like 2 years ago too? So does it kind of balance out or no?
I mean, there was a lot of property selling, but there wasn't a lot for sale, right? So property would sell in a second, but there weren't that many new properties being sold. So the market was hot and things sold instantly, but it's not that there was like a massive rise in the amount of property selling because there was such little supply.
They were just selling fast.
Yeah, they were selling fast. And now
Got
what's
it.
happening is people list properties. We're not really listing more than we were before. And I'm speaking for Montreal, to be honest. I'm
Mm,
more
okay. Yeah, yeah.
specific about Montreal, but we're not listing that many more properties, but they take way longer to sell now. So
Yeah.
there's a lot more available, but it's not that there's more properties being listed. It's just that they're staying available longer for a longer period of time.
Yeah. One of our clients at Nomad Creative works for Royal LePage. He's a real estate agent and like he's experienced the same thing. And I feel like anyone who I kind of talk to in this space is just going through it, which is tough. But is there anything that you can do on your end to kind of balance out like when you are in a lower season, whether it's specific to your business or something that you would suggest for someone else to do to help when things are slower? Like what can we focus on instead, or what are other things that can be done in order to maybe bring in more business or create like a separate revenue stream or something like that?
Yeah, I mean, so mortgage originations are down 30%, but I'm actually having a record year, which is amazing.
Hmm.
I'm not like, blowing my record out of the water, but I am having my best year yet. But that's because before rates started increasing, I was advised by someone I look up to really kind of double down on marketing, double down on all my activities that are working to generate new business because it wasn't going to last forever. So
Right.
I took their advice to heart and that's what I started doing. So I kind of really doubled down on all my social media marketing. I doubled down on making effective processes. So really trying to create that raving fan out of every single client.
Mm,
And luckily I did because the rates started increasing a lot sooner than we expected them to. And because of that, business slowed down, but I was also growing the amount of referral sources I had. I had more clients referring me to their friends and family. So although there were less mortgages to be had, I was slowly taking a bigger and bigger market share. Obviously, this year I really, I had objectives and I wanted to grow my volume by a certain percentage, and that didn't happen
yeah, I feel you.
because it was a tougher, just tougher economy this year. But luckily, I was still able to grow a little bit, and I'm grateful for that. But it's because a year and a half, 2 years ago, I really started working a lot harder on business development,
Yeah.
building solid partnerships with real estate brokers and financial planners, and it's paying off. So it's
Yeah.
really just kind of no one can anticipate when the market's going to shift, but to just know that it will eventually, and that the golden age of mortgages isn't going to last forever. You need to kind of understand that, and then just focus on generating more business before it's too late.
Yeah, I love that you leaned into that too. And I feel like that business development aspect and creating those processes is so underrated. When I first started my business, I did so much myself, as one does. Typically that's the strategy. You think that you need to do it all because you don't necessarily want to be spending money on people to do the things that you can probably do yourself, but maybe there's someone else that can do it better, or maybe you don't like to do it but you do it anyway because you want to save on the money. And then you get to a point where you're like, all right, like I'm going to start delegating, I'm going to start hiring a team and getting people to support me. And for me at least, I feel kind of similar to you in the last year where I too wanted to kind of take things to the next level, really skyrocket them. And though it was kind of more of a similar year to last year, excuse me, more of a similar year, like this year to last year than I wanted. At the same time, I spent so much time and effort implementing these processes and systems so that the business can operate without me. And so the things that I used to be doing and making sure that I'm, the one to be in touch with the clients on a weekly basis, sending the emails, keeping track of the projects, because that's kind of the phase I was at. Whereas like before, I also did like the design and the accounting and the whatever. So like that was the last thing for me to get rid of from my plate. And so I've been working with like a freelance project manager over the last few years. And then this year really found someone to be a little bit more consistent. And that's the main point of contact for all of my clients, who also manages the entire team. So I still see what's going on. I still oversee give final approvals, but at the end of the day, like it's not me who is leading the client through the project, so that I can now focus on that sales aspect that we spoke about, which is not something I ever really had to do before. So even though I'm 6 years into my business, it's funny because I feel like I'm almost learning these sales things from like an outreach perspective for the first time, or at least for the first time in the way that like I really want to grow my business, because the way I was doing it was before was kind of half-ass, but it worked.
Yeah.
And I'd get the clients and things were great. And then I was making tons of money because I was working on the projects, right? So there was a big margin there. But now there's less of a margin because it's not me doing the work. However, I'm now in a position where I have a team in place that I can rely on to scale. So now my focus is basically just bringing in the business, and the team can take care of it because I trust them and I have those things in place. So that's been like a really cool transition. I feel like you're kind of in the same headspace. So kudos to you for jumping ahead and thinking and planning and making all of those processes seamless so that you can have that experience
Yeah.
for your clients.
Yeah, that's really it. And it's about investing in your business. And like you said, like you might make less money per deal or whatever,
Yeah.
but it will allow you to grow in the long run. So for a mortgage
Mm-hmm.
broker and for a real estate broker, I feel like a stepping stone is to hire, a full-time assistant to
Yeah.
really help do all the stuff that you don't actually need to do, all the administrative stuff. So I
Mm-hmm.
did that on year two. And then after that, it was just kind of streamlining processes. So make
Yeah.
everything smoother, make it easier for the clients. And what I realized last year was that because for a mortgage broker and real estate broker, it's so seasonal in that, like in the spring, we're doing tons of pre-approvals, and then all those mortgage pre-approvals become live when people have accepted offers. There's like a 3 or 4 month period where I'm just stuck to my desk, like underwriting mortgages and making sure they get approved.
Yeah.
And the 2 months at the beginning of the year, I was going out and meeting, referral partners and creating buzz and building solid relationships with solid partners. But then for 3 or 4 months after that, I'm just strapped to my desk and I can't go out and see them, and I can't maintain those relationships. And
Right.
that's what I realized was not that it was a problem, because we still had a good year, but it was a problem in that I had to go and rebuild those relationships after those 3 or 4 months where I was strapped to the desk and just had to make sure that all the mortgages got approved. So for next year, I think that's something I'm going to be working on, where I might have 1 or 2 mortgage brokers that can really help underwrite the mortgages. And
Hmm.
I'll still stay client facing. I'll still be the point of contact for the referral sources and for the clients, but at least I'll have a team on the back end that's going to help me do the things that I don't need to be the one doing them, right? Like they
Yeah.
have licenses, they're allowed to submit applications to lenders, and they can help me do that. So that's really the next step, right? It was
Yeah.
full-time assistant, and now having 1 or 2 brokers kind of work with me so that we can handle more volume but still offer the same kind of quality of service.
Yeah, that's it. And it's also a great opportunity for them too, like someone who's maybe more junior, that you can kind of teach them the ropes, how you like to have things done, how you would like to communicate with X, Y, and Z, because that is important to have that consistency and the experience as much as like those processes matter. Also, like the way that you're communicating with your clients and your people or your vendors, whoever is involved in the process, right? Because they're an extension of you and your brand. So pay attention. Anyone who's hiring, you should care. You should care a lot about who you're hiring, and be very intentional with the questions that you're asking, the type of person that they are. Like, yes, you're typically hiring someone to do a technical job, but like you should care about their values too, and if they align with yours, because at the end of the day, whatever you do, whatever you put out in your business is a reflection of you. I really truly believe that.
Yeah, and I agree. Like, you should hire like-minded people who
Yeah.
have similar just kind of personalities, in the
Yeah,
sense that,
that
like,
too. You want to
like,
enjoy who you work with.
yeah, and I'm not going to work with someone who's like, like I'm not inherently loud, like I'm calm, I'm confident in what I know, but I'm not going to
Yeah.
be the loudest person in the room. And so I want people who are just also chill,
on
kind
your
of can
on your
focus,
level,
and
vibing
yeah,
like you.
exactly.
Yeah. Makes sense. Makes perfect sense. I want to talk about like how you've been balancing your personal life in your career. Every entrepreneur knows that it can be very consuming. You said, there are a few months of the year where you literally are glued to your desk, you can't move. What are some things that you do to kind of practice that work-life balance? Do you feel like you have a good balance, or are you like, nah?
It's getting better and better. Luckily,
Yeah.
I have a wife who's also an entrepreneur and
Oh, cool.
works
What does
really
she
hard.
do?
Yeah, so she's incredible. Like, I honestly look up to her, and
I love that.
yeah, in business, like she's really really cool, and she's helped me so much because she works in marketing too.
Okay.
But since she was like 17, she's owned a photography business where she's
Nice.
a wedding photographer, and she loves that.
Mm,
It's should be a full-time job, and it is for most people, but she also has another job now where she runs a marketing firm, and she runs all the operations for them. But so
really cool.
she does a couple of things. And but yeah, I've definitely, like, ever since I met her, like I really really look up to how hard she works. But she is a workaholic to some people, but we still have dinner together, we hang out,
Yeah.
and some nights we'll both be in our offices kind of being like, is this okay? And I was like, well, I'm okay. Are you okay? She's like, yeah, I feel great. I'm like, okay, great. And
Yeah.
we're both working hard, but we still spend a lot of time together, and we're able to disconnect when we need to. But
Good.
I think
Yeah.
it's important to have a partner that supports you and is happy to see you kind of working hard. And I'm
And
lucky in that sense.
understands that like sometimes you do need to put in that extra time in those hours. I think that's important too. I was chatting with someone the other day who was saying that they didn't believe in like work-life balance, but in the end I kind of like called her out and was like, actually what you said is work-life balance, because in her head she was like, oh, it's like the 9 to 5 and then evenings and weekends I turn off. And she's like, sometimes, I'm in a phase where like for a few weeks or a few months I'm like a workaholic, and then I'll take like a few weeks and chill. And I'm like, that's still balance, like it's balance in a different way, because sometimes in that season of life, it does require you to hustle and put in that extra effort, whether it's, a season in your industry where things do pick up and things are more intense. And it's like, well, you want to take advantage of that and get the most out of your time and your business in focusing your energy at that time. And then there are other times where it's slower and it's like, okay, you know what? This is my time where I can chill. And, sometimes those things are not necessarily in our control, but then recognizing when we do have the ability to turn off or disconnect, that we do that. And also recognizing that even if you are in those like really peak seasons, that if you're feeling overwhelmed, like things are too much, recognize that too and like pull yourself out and give yourself that time, because otherwise you're just going to be operating from a place of like exhaustion. The work that you're going to do is not going to be to like the best of your abilities. Clients, relationships, all those things are going to suffer. So it's like, listen to yourself, listen to your body. That balance, however you want to see it, look at it, like it exists. And it's just a matter of like listening to yourself and like doing what feels good. So the fact that like you and your wife, like I get that. Sometimes I'm in my office and I'm working, and my husband's a pilot. So like he's sometimes flying, he's gone for a few days, and then other times he's hanging around here all day and I'm working in my office and he putzes around and he's like, hey, what are you doing? I'm like, I'm working, So like, but we get it and we like respect each other's like time when it is to work, as different as our schedules are. But anyways, I love to hear that you guys find that balance within each other too.
Yeah, and also like for my business, I have goals of, certain volumes I want to do, but I also
Mm-hmm.
have goals of how many hours I want to end up working when I'm
Yes.
reaching those goals. I'm very,
Mm-hmm.
very conscious of like, okay, I want to do this many mortgages in a year, but I also don't want to work more than this many hours. So I'm working
Yeah, I
towards
love
that.
that.
And it's about implementing the processes and the team that allows you to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And I also figure I'm 33 years old. Like now is the time to kind of work on setting that up so that when I'm a bit older and I want to work a little less, I can do that still and still hit, the goals I want to hit. Um, but yeah, it's helpful to have a partner that has this. Yeah,
Understands.
understands exactly.
Yeah. It's funny. You say you're 33, I'm 30. Do you ever feel like you wish you were further along in your career? Do you feel like this, like I'm in like a good spot? Because sometimes I feel like I'm like, I feel like I should be further along in my business growth journey. But maybe that's just like the comparison person in me. Like, how do you feel about that given your age?
Always, always,
Yeah.
always feel that way. Yeah. Even
I
when I was
think
younger, like in my 20s, I was like, I need to be further than I am right now. Whether it was, running the other business or buying my first property, I was like, I need to have more now. Why don't I have more?
are you like you have like a go-getter personality?
Yeah, and I try to surround myself with go-getter friends. I feel like
Yeah, ambitious people.
ambitious people with age, I just tend to kind of I feel like I'll go hang out with the friends that are kind of hustling a lot harder
Mm-hmm.
than other friends, and I really really love it. Like my favorite conversations are about business with friends. Like for sure we have friends, we have fun, we play sports and whatever,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
I'll be playing tennis with my buddy, and we always end up at the net just talking about work and business.
Yeah, that's it. And that's what I feel like a lot of people don't understand, especially if you're like not in business, like how it's kind of fun and like interesting for us. Like this is kind of like our livelihood. It's not like a regular job where we come home, we forget about it. Like it's so much of our life and like who we are and like how much it consumes us, and not in a bad way, like in a good way, because we're excited and we're passionate and we have goals and we're ambitious and like, yeah, I don't know. I feel like sometimes it might just be because of like who you're comparing yourself to in a way, because I'm catching myself and I'm saying like, oh, you wish or you feel like you should be further along. This is why I'm asking you this, because I feel impressed of where you are, and I feel that way for a lot of people. But at the end of the day, we're all kind of in like a similar boat, just like doing it in our own way. So I think it's all in our heads.
Yeah, no, it definitely is. But I also appreciate like having, you know, brokers at our agency that do more volume than me and who've been in it for a little longer, but they also are hitting the goals that I want to hit one day, and it just shows me that it is possible and it is
Yeah,
doable.
totally.
So I'm
Anything is
happy with
freaking
that.
possible. Are you
Yeah.
kidding?
Yeah.
Anything is possible. Every single millionaire, billionaire started out just like us, just like anybody else. And it's funny because I do follow like some other entrepreneurs, leaders, coaches, whatever on social media. And I'm recognizing that they're like a lot of them are kind of in their 40s And I feel like in my head, I used to think like, oh, when you're 40 or when you're 50, like that's like too late to like reach the peak of your career. And I think we just have this like crazy eagerness to like get things quickly. And we forget to like really enjoy the process and recognize that like actually for where we are for our age, it is impressive. And we should recognize that within ourselves. And like, yeah, there are some like anomalies, people who are in their 20s who like build $1 million companies, which is amazing. Not to like directly compare to them, but everyone is going to be on a different timeline. And I think that that's where I kind of like set myself back. I'm like, well, they did it that way, but then I'm like, oh, wait, but there's someone who's like in their 40s and they just started like blowing up and they're doing incredible things. I'm like, wait, when's it going to happen for me?
Yeah. But I think that's the entrepreneur in you, like you
Yeah.
just you just always want to kind of better yourself, and you see what other people are doing and you're like, okay, I could do it too.
Yeah. It is motivating.
Yeah, for
It
sure. And
is
you need that
motivating.
motivation. And that's
Yeah.
like one thing, I find being a mortgage broker can sometimes be a little lonely. Like that's one
Mm-hmm.
thing I think about a lot. And for
Yeah.
sure, you can have your team but you're still, I don't know, compared to a business where you walk into an office and you have like, 5 or 10 or 20 people working with you and you're talking to them all the time. Or maybe it's just the kind of work from home kind of
Yeah. I
situation
could
that we're in now,
relate. I
it
could
just it
relate.
feels
Mm-hmm.
it feels lonely. So I try to get out and go see my referral partners as much as possible, but even other brokers that I don't work with, that I'm not a
Yeah.
team with, like I'll go see them once or twice a week just to kind of talk about what's going on and to see how they're doing. And I find that really, really helpful because it can be lonely.
Yeah, definitely. There are some people like go-to people that I'll connect with to see like what's going on in the business. I'm also involved in a lot of the like chamber of commerce in the
Oh,
area that
cool.
I live. So like even last night I was at like a business excellence awards in Prince Edward County, and like a couple weeks ago I was at the Queenie West Business Achievement Awards. So like there's like those awards that happen every year that bring everybody together, but then there's multiple networking events like throughout the year. So it's nice to kind of run into these people. And to be honest, for the most part, we don't really even talk about like business. It's just like you understand each other on a different level, and like I guess have a certain level of like respect, understanding the hustle that they're also putting in and going
Yeah.
through. So it's nice to kind of have that community too, and then to connect with everyone on social media and see like what are they launching, like what achievements did they hit and all of that. And just to be able to like cheer each other on is nice too, because I've never, since moving here in Ontario, I'm kind of in like more of a like a remote area. I've never been more connected to entrepreneurs as I have since I moved here and joined those chambers. So that's definitely kind of like what I pulled from those, is more like the community more than
Yeah.
anything.
That's kind of like a rule I follow is if I'm invited to a networking event or to whatever it might be, I will very rarely say no. I try to do everything at least twice, but there's real estate networking events where I'm like, I don't know if this actually fits with what I'm doing, but I was invited. I'm going to go. I'm going to go see what it's about. And it's rare that I don't kind of get any value from it, and
Yeah.
I'm not saying necessarily like to get a mortgage from it, but it could be meeting someone who I get along with really well, or who, you know, can help me or I can help them, and we could build a new relationship. So I really try not to say no when I'm invited somewhere, whether it be a networking event or we have like coalitions we're part of that have like retreats down south. So I'm going next week
Oh,
to
cool.
Mexico with our coalition.
Nice.
Yeah, and like 3 weeks ago I was in Toronto. Last year we were in Vancouver for the mortgage professionals kind of annual conference. And
Hmm.
I honestly, like, whenever I go, I'm like, I can't believe more mortgage brokers from Quebec don't go to these things. Like, I find them so useful. You meet
Hmm.
so many interesting people. When I come back, I'm so much more motivated than I was the week before. So for me, like, that's one thing that I try to always do is just say, okay, yes, I'm going to go. Just
Yeah.
always, always, always.
Yeah, there's a lot of value in building connections with people face to face. And that's what I'm noticing is like you said, it's different when you're going into an office with a bunch of people versus just like connecting with them on Zoom. You just have like a different bond, right? So it's the same in like the business world. And when I think for me in the last few years of really attending all of these events, the first few events I went to, I was like, I'm gonna pitch, I'm gonna give my business card. And then you realize like it's not really about that. It's about just like building those relationships and connections. So like maybe down the line it'll lead to something, but sometimes it's like, hey, like we're hosting a private event at the opening of our winery for the season. Do you want to come? It's like the industry. I'm like, yeah, sure. So like little things like that become like a benefit. And then you're kind of in this more like exclusive group of people that has access to things that like regular people don't, which is kind of cool. Um, and not that that like brings direct like revenue into my business, but it's value for me as like an entrepreneur. And also like other things like being asked to do like keynote speeches or sitting on a panel. Like if I have these relationships with other entrepreneurs and they're, let's say, on another panel and they're like, hey, there's an open spot, like I recommend Alyssa, then cool, you know? So it's like little things like that that you don't realize really have an impact. But relationships are really kind of like the core, I think, of everything, like every business, every company, every brand. It's like the people, it's the relationships. It always, always, always comes back to that. And I'm just like feeling that more and more as I've been building
Oh,
brands for the last 6 years.
100%. And it's not that you're going to feel like an immediate impact, but by doing
Yeah.
these things, like it does create opportunities.
Long
And it's
term.
funny
Yeah.
that, yeah, and it's funny you mentioned like the panel thing. Like in Mexico, I was asked to speak on a panel in
Amazing.
Mexico. So that's why I'm going to do that. But that's because I went to Vancouver last year and I met the president of the coalition. We got along really well.
There you go.
And now this year he asked, hey, you're going to be in Mexico. Like, do you want to speak on the panel? I was like, yeah, I'd love to.
Yeah.
And that never would have happened if I didn't go to Vancouver. And, so it's always say yes. And it's just eventually going to create opportunities. You're going to meet amazing people. And it's really cool.
Yeah, yeah. And same with me. Like in I think 2 weeks, I'm sitting on a panel
No, cool.
through one of the chambers. They had held an event. And I had always been reaching out to them like, hey, is there anything that I can do that I can support? Can I do a workshop, this and that? And I was always willing to like give. And they basically created an entire event because they were inspired by me. And that's what she said. She said that in front of everybody. I had no idea. Okay. Me, I just thought, oh, because she created this event. It was called Not a Trade Show. And basically, we were like in groups of different businesses that had 3 minutes to go up and like pitch their business. And so when I went up and it was my turn to speak, she introduced me and she's like, and by the way, Alyssa is the inspiration for this whole event. And I'm like, what? Like, that's so crazy. And so then she emailed me after and was like, hey, we're doing like a breakfast panel, blah, 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 in a couple of weeks. Like, do you want to speak on it? And I was like, sure.
Yeah.
So it's like little things like that. And I've just been like in touch with her, connecting, emailing, seeing her at different events. And we just have like a really good rapport. And that's what it is, you know?
Yeah. And just, trying things too, like reaching out to potential partners that I think might be a long shot, but then 3-4 months later, they're like, hey, you know what? Like, we'd love you to come present to our office. And I was like, oh, okay, great. Like, thank God I sent you that email 3-4 months ago, because if I hadn't, this never would have happened. So it's just like giving it a shot. What's the worst that can happen? And
Yeah. Same with like how you're like posting consistently on social. It's like, let's say you meet someone and you're like, hey, just follow me, whatever, but you're not really trying to get a sale out of them. But the fact that they're going to continuously see your content, they're going to build trust because of the value that you're providing them for free. This lead is no longer a cold lead because they've been warmed up and trust you because of everything that you've shared throughout this whole time. And that's what a lot of brands, I think, fail to realize is they're thinking, let me go on social media to get more followers, to get more sales. Yes, I guess ultimately at the end of the day, but it's not like immediate. Like you said, it's
no.
not immediate. It's about building the trust in the relationship, and it's about the long haul.
Yeah.
And so I feel like that's where people get frustrated when they're like, oh, like I didn't get enough sales or I didn't get like enough growth and this and that. And it's like you're nurturing the people who are there, and whether they're like coming from an ad or they're coming from a networking event, and it's that single person. All you need is one person, and that one person can trickle into so many, right? That whole like web of referrals is just magic.
Yeah. It's funny you say that, because I really saw like year 3 for me is when I saw social media starting to pay off. Like I
Mm-hmm.
stuck with it
There you go.
consistently. And it
3
was
years.
really year 3. I was like, oh, wow. Like now I'm having, consumers reach out to me being like, hey, I have some mortgage questions, or I'm thinking about buying. Do you have time for a call? It's like, yeah, for sure. But that wasn't happening necessarily in year 1 and 2. But year 3, I was like, wow, this is actually happening more and more often. And so, yeah, you just got to stick to it, and eventually it'll pay off. But it's, and you're right that it's about kind of like building your brand, but also showing that you're a credible source, you're trustworthy.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's, but it takes time. It's not instant.
Yeah. Yeah, it takes time, but the fact that you're doing it, you're off to a good start. So thank you for being a good example. And everyone who's listening, take note. Come to Nomad Creative.
Yeah.
Okay, well, we're gonna wrap up. It's been so good chatting. Before we finish the podcast, I always end by asking my guests through this segment called Mindful Minute, where you share a piece of advice based on, your career, personal life, anything that you feel is a lesson that you wish to share to anyone listening.
Yeah, I mean, I think this can work in any business, but if you're a good person and you just be yourself, like I don't change who I am when I'm having a meeting with clients. I don't kind of put on this different
Hmm.
personality. I am just myself. And if you do that, it's going to be a lot easier for people to trust you because you're showing them your true self. And if you know what you're talking about and you're being yourself, people will gravitate towards you and they'll be happy to work with you. So it's just be honest. And yeah, and I think that applies to any business.
Yeah, I agree. I'm on the same page. Thank you so much for your time, Matt. Can you let everybody know where they can find you on social, how they can connect with you, maybe your website?
Yeah, I think the easiest way is on Instagram, Mathieu-Alexandre Poupart, and they'll definitely find me. And then from there, they can hit my link tree and they'll see all the different links to all my apps, my scheduling app, and yeah.
Perfect. Sounds good. All right, everyone. Thank you for listening. I hope you learned a thing or two about mortgages and building your brand. That's it for us today, but we'll chat next week. Bye.
Bye.